think the best thing that we have ever enjoyed since we entered into development work is the coming of ACT.
You cannot go and ask the government to be accountable when you yourself you are not.
ACT came with a mentality that was not there before. Coaching mentality, mentoring mentality.
It was no more about table desktop operations. It's now into the field and getting more impact and getting more people's life transformed.
The gain of this EU intervention on my organization is enormous that I can't begin to enumerate one by one.
Well, whether or not there is an EU Act program too, I can say very clearly that the European Union would continue to support the civil society sector.
ACT is actually agent for citizens-driven transformation. It is the EU flagship program that looks to support strengthening of civil society organizations' capacity to become more credible, to become more effective, efficient in what they do, so they can contribute effectively to sustainable development in Nigeria.
Way back about 7 or so years ago, even before then, there have been series of bills, to attempt to regulate civil society. Those bills were largely driven by the, the legislators, and they were not that friendly, actually, or enabling to the civil society organizations.
Over the years, you would have seen that there has always been conversation around NGO bill. NGOs are not regulated, NGOs are over-regulated. Depends on the side that you want to look at it. So our role is to put civil society in the midst of that conversation.
It then became necessary to actually support a process where, rather than just a legislator coming up with a bill, maybe it's better for civil society to be involved and work with the legislators to come up with something, if at all a bill is needed anyway, and even review holistically what already exists.
We did a lot of mappings, a lot of research at the beginning, and we understand that there are over 17 regulations that currently are binding on the work of civil society organizations. So the question of whether civil society organizations are regulated or not regulated is actually, for me, it's not a question. They are actually regulated. They are, if not over-regulated. There is no law in this country that is binding on any corporate entity that does not affect what civil society organization does.
Also, through the EU Act project, we are looking at strengthening the regulatory environment that civil society organizations work in. And through that, we are working with government agencies, particularly the Corporate Affairs Commission, PENCOM, the FIRS, SCOMO, to mention a few, and just basically working and engaging with them to ensure that the regulatory environment in which civil society organizations function is conducive for them.
We are looking at 4 priority areas, 4 strategic priority areas. The first one is strengthening civil society regulatory framework at national level. That's basically dealing with extant laws. Okay. And the second priority is supporting civil society, especially networks, to engage for harmonization of civil society registration procedures. The third priority is supporting civil society to come up with some sort of self-regulatory framework, so that if they can self-regulate, is also a good thing. It adds to the credibility. And the fourth is more like a cross-cutting priority, is supporting establishment of a functioning online civil society regulatory platform. And what that platform would do is actually basically have a compendium of the key relevant laws and regulations, simplified format in one place online, so CSOs can go to it, and then they will be aware of the requirement of these different regulations and try to comply, and there will be back-end support. Something else that is not often talked about, I mentioned the gender and social inclusion. You make laws, but you don't look at how the gender and socially inclusive these laws are. And so we got a team to actually, I believe for the first time, actually focusedly carry out evidence research, okay, to see how gender and socially inclusive regulatory frameworks are. From the findings of that report, a strategy has been developed to mainstream gender and social inclusion across the regulatory frameworks.
Talking about the regulations of government, especially Kano State government, they've given us enabling environments. They are not over-regulating us as far as Kano State government is concerned. We operating freely, and we have that space to operate.
We do have issues of collating, or let's say working alongside government, because some of them see CSOs as a threat in some extent, because they see CSOs as being transparent, and probably they might actually checkmate and see whatever they're doing.
The funny thing is, when you go to Ministry of Social Welfare and you register, you get a certificate and you're operating. If you want to do anything with Ministry of Youth, they will still ask you to register. If you want to do with anything and you invite Ministry of Environment, they'll still ask you for registration. Ministry of Women Affairs, they'll still ask you for registration. So you can see the multiple registrations. That's why we need just the government to say, maybe this is a board. This is the office you can go for registration. And with that certificate, you can work with the government in Rivers State.
When you have a regulatory environment that is multi-level, that is cumbersome, and you end up leaving out most of these CSOs. You leave them behind because they don't have any legal backing to operate. And so the civil society organizations that are not able to properly get registered because of the multi-level processes involved in registration, or probably the cumbersomeness, or probably the cost of even getting registered. When you have all that barriers, then most civil society organizations, especially the community-based organizations, will be left out because their operations will be termed illegal.
So far, at least in all the 10 states piloting this, the CSOs have engaged the MDS, and they've been able to review the issues around the multiple registration. And they are now, some of the states are actually moving ahead to come up with something like a one-stop shop. It may involve coming up with a state-level bill to maybe get just one agency to do the registration. We also have been able to support the CSO through a policy legal advocacy center plan to help CSOs engage with National Assembly, legislative engagement, with a view to actually reviewing the laws like Companies and Allied Matters Act, even beyond what exists, look at, are there gaps? And so there have been a series of multi-stakeholders engagement. This is engagement involving both CSOs and government. You know, they don't like sitting together to talk. So I think in a way, when you talk about achievement, that is even one major achievement, being able to actually get the two to sit down and discuss together. So that has resulted in, for example, I'm sure you might have heard about the public hearings recently in March, the amendment of Companies and Allied Matters Act, controversial 2020. So as a result of that support, so there's a process to amend CAMA to make it more enabling for civil society organizations.
The second area is also to look at supporting civil society organizations to galvanize together, to come together and engage in constructive dialogue with other stakeholders in a way that will reform the regulatory landscape for civil society organizations.
There was this dearth in networking in Rivers State. People worked in cliques, in cartels, in groups, individually. If you are fortunate to have a big donor, you do your thing yourself. There was we were not totally working on the SDG 17 at all. We're doing things. Organizations were doing things. There was like the civic group shrunk their own civic space.
Somehow the civil society space is shrinking because there are state-sponsored as well as private sector sponsored NGOs, okay, who are out there to antagonize NGOs that are, very determined to transform the Nigerian landscape for the better.
Before the coming of Act and before Act's intervention, the CSOs are in a competitive settings. They are not helping each other. They don't work together because they feel threatened by others. But with the coming of with the coming of the Act program, we're able to bring them together and make them understand that they are working for the general good of the civil society in the state.
There should be mutual consensus among the regulators and the civil society, and that is our role. That is what we are doing, facilitating some level of constructive engagement between the two to be able to, and we are getting that result. We are happy that we went that direction.
We actually have, in terms of achievement, been able to get the networks from all the 36 states plus FCT to come together to develop a self-regulatory framework after consultation, national, regional. And in fact, on the 12th of May, that framework is going to be validated, and then the adoption phase would kick in.
So Rivers Network of NGOs is a partner to Nigerian Network of NGOs. Even under the Component 2, we also had a grant. We qualified for a grant under the Component 2, and so we're working with Nigerian Network of NGOs as well.
Specifically, they have helped us to have most of the regulatory documents we actually need as an organization, a lot of them. Our policies have been reviewed based on this. We thought we had something, good policies, operational policies, but the EU Act program has, yes. So we are looking at ourselves now as a fully developed organization.
So the legal compliance and the funding are the key issues, and the program is very strategic. The EU Act program is very strategic and targets those areas. And it has really, in my own view, it has really touched and have done quite a lot to improve the legal compliance with the regulations, compliance with taxation, payment of tax, or getting the tax clearance certificates, and also in terms of paying the annual returns, registration with SCOMs and other regulatory agencies. I think the program has done wonderfully well. What I think we need to do is to utilize those aspects to access more funds and to be able to serve the humanity much better.
One of the things we have done so far is, as soon as we finished with our financial management program, we had to audit our accounts for 2 years. So right now, we have an audited account.
Currently, we have some funding from Oya Media and MacArthur. And we use the compliance and the other things that we have, courtesy of EU Act, to do that. We also had, for the first time, through the support of EU Act, we had the tax clearance certificate from Federal Inland Revenue Services for 2020 and 2021. So those, and we are able, in fact, we have paid our annual return to CAC even for the last year. That's for the December we have paid. So the compliance, the level of compliance as far as EADA is concerned has greatly improved, and that is giving us a lot of opportunity to work with other potential partners.
And then we generally also work with regulators on specific things like Corporate Affairs Commission. We are supporting them to put in place something that is going to benefit not even CSOs alone, but all the customers of CAC, that would enable them to move away from manual filing of their financial accounts, but to filing that electronically. And so we've engaged a consultant to support CAC to put in place that software. And we're also working with them, for example, in collaboration with our consultant to actually train CSOs on the 4 major regulatory frameworks: Companies and Allied Matters Act, pension law, tax laws, and the anti-money laundering law. And then we actually have the representative from each of these regulators in the room, in the training hall with the consultants.
We don't have a solution. We don't bring on board to say this is the best way for you to do it, but we are bringing the CSOs to think together. So this is the issue. Think around what you can, how you would like it to be resolved. What are the support that you will want from us? These are the way that we can support you. And then once we identify that issues, we take it to, okay, these are the regulators. We also engage with them. These are the issues coming from the civil society organization. You have this responsibility to regulate them, but they are saying this and they are saying that. Are you willing to engage with them and try to bridge these issues? And they say, oh, many cases, in fact, in all the cases of the regulators that I listed, they are quite happy to engage, and we facilitate that relationship.
As a program, we are aware that we're only going to be here for a short while, and so we work with institutions that are actually going to be around much longer. Like I mentioned, regulators, for example, on the government side. We look out for civil society organizations that are good and going to be around to champion, like the self-regulation I mentioned, the networks. We've gotten them to form themselves into a general assembly, and then they have a national technical committee on civil society self-regulation. So, and they formalize, they have their terms of reference, the structures that would drive this beyond acts. We are also looking at, like, in terms of legislative engagement, reactivating the civil society liaison office at the National Assembly. You know, if that is there beyond us, it will still continue. We work with some of the international NGOs like OSIWA, MacArthur Foundation, etc. We even collaborate with other donors program like USAID Civil Society program called, you said, SCALE. A key sustainability measure for us would be that at the end of the day, even beyond us as a program, civil society and the legislators and the regulators are still able to have access to one another and talk and continue to dialogue.
The Agents for Citizen-Driven Transformation Act program has proven to be an effective intervention in the civic space in Nigeria. It is now left to benefiting organizations to sustain the gain of the program.